Hey guys, first regardsman here, and so I'll be talking about the brand new Techmarine class for Space Marine 2 patch 12.0 on the public test server. Now, we're going to be breaking down all of his weapons, his entire perk tree, and his class ability here, and I just want to say the Techmarine is an incredibly fun class in this game. This guy feels like he has taken into account all the updates we've had for the past year and a half, and his gameplay is very fluid. I think he'll be very popular, and maybe a bit more difficult to play for some players, we'll get into that. And overall, he's in a pretty decent spot as far as fun is concerned. There are some issues with him, but I think a lot of those will be addressed by the time he officially releases. Now, as far as the weapons the Techmarine has available to him, number one, he has the auto bolt rifle, the standard bolt rifle, which gives you access to the grenade launcher and the combi melta, of course, the heavy bolt rifle, which has a brand new access to the heroic heavy bolt rifle, doesn't actually have a name yet, that has an underslung grenade launcher on top of the Oculus bolt carbine and the plasma incinerator. Now, his secondary options are the bolt pistol, which gives you the access to the heroic bolt pistol, heavy bolt pistol with Retribution's request as well, the plasma pistol, inferno pistol, which got a buff to its gunstrike damage this patch, and the Neo-Volkite pistol, which also got a buff to its gunstrike damage this patch. So he has a lot of options for guns. And as far as melee weapons go, he also has a lot of options here. Number one, we have the combat knife, and he is the only class in Space Marine 2 that has access to not only the combat knife, but also the perk overcharge we'll get into later. And on top of that, you also have the power sword, power axe, and the brand new Omnissian Axe. Now, I know a lot of people want to hear all about this. We'll break this down even more in a later video, but for now, I want to say I think this weapon is really fun, a very interesting moveset to say the least, and honestly pretty strong. I don't think it's like the strongest option he has, but it's definitely up there. I would take this weapon over the power sword currently, and as far as its heroic variant is concerned, it's one of the best options for it, and that's a pretty good thing to have for your heroic weapon, because heroic weapons are pretty damn popular in Space Marine 2 for good reason. Now, I'm going to go break down the perk tree here next. The Techmarine's class ability here is called the Servo-gun. Ability, unleash a powerful Servo-gun volley, and your starting perk is you can detect and activate Tarantula sentry guns, and they will attack nearby enemies until they run out of ammo or are destroyed. Now, Tarantula sentry guns will appear on map for operations. They are currently not in siege mode, but similar to Gene Seeds and the Guardian Relic pickups, they are in randomized preset locations, though I should mention they are far more plentiful on map than the Gene Seed and Guardian Relic spots. Like, you will find them in quite a few areas, and once you activate one, you will just be able to basically funnel a bunch of enemies to you and blow them apart. So pretty powerful option there. And as far as the servo gun goes, this is the signature weapon on your shoulder. You have three variants for this. The base version is the standard bolter version, which you just take by taking the explosive enfilade perk, which is pretty much mandatory to actually use it because the other two will change your gun. And you have the precision enhancement, which turns it into like a sniper option for long range shooting, and the plasma enhancement, which turns it into a plasma projectile AoE machine. So pretty unique options there. Currently in the public test server, the servo gun is a bit underpowered in base damage. We'll talk about that later. As far as how it performs in combat, it will recover your CHP while it's firing. It is fully automatic. You cannot use it while rolling, but either way, it's a pretty fun tool. I think people will be very big fans of this. And now, one thing I want to mention that's not actually mentioned in his perks at all is that this class is able to automatically gunstrike without actually using your secondary animation whatsoever. So what that means is, when you get a parry on the Techmarine class, you will then get the opportunity to gunstrike an enemy. As long as your servo gun is not in action, you will be able to just fire it off for an automatic gunstrike. It will do less damage than your secondary would, because the servo gun does not take the damage of your secondary for a gunstrike into account, but it does take the version of the servo gun you've chosen. And what I mean by that is, if you take precision enhancement, you will do the most damage on your gun strikes on the servo gun, and then plasma and the standard one do the exact same amount. All of it is pretty low, but that's kind of like the trade-off for getting these automatic gun strikes. Now, while you are having your servo gun active, you will not be able to gun strike with it, but the servo gun isn't active for that long, and it's a pretty easy thing to work around. Now, the next thing I want to talk about here is his perk tree. So first up, we have Explosive Enfilade. After using equipment, your range damage increases by 15% for 10 seconds. This perk is an additive buff. It is pretty nice to have. I will say the equipment focus on the Techmarine feels pretty damn good to use, and it definitely has a pretty nice range focus, because the next perk I'll go into down here is called Methodical Destruction. Enemies damaged by equipment take 25% more damage for 10 seconds. The way this perk works is that it will apply a multiplicative damage buff to your ranged attacks versus enemies that are hit by your equipment, and an additive damage buff to your melee attacks. So this is like primarily for a ranged build, which is pretty nice and definitely fits that overall playstyle, because if you're taking melee, you're probably going to take the other perk up here, Arc Cleave. Damage from charged melee attacks increases by 25%. This perk is the exact same perk that the Bulwark and Assault have. Is just overcharge on the Techmarine here, and even though they just renamed it, it's the same effect. It's a multiplicative damage buff. It'll affect your Power Wave on your Power Axe, the Shadow Stab on your Combat Knife, the Power Rake on your Power Sword, and the heavy attacks of your brand new Omnissian Axe. It is a very powerful perk option. This is also the first time we have ever had Arc Cleave with a Combat Knife, so pretty neat thing there. And the final perk in this row is probably the weakest in my opinion, Omnissian Axe Deflection. After a perfect parry or perfect block, you will take 25% less damage from range attacks for 5 seconds. You know, a 25% reduction to range attacks is pretty nice because this class doesn't have any damage reduction outside of things like this or the perk up here, Reinforced Position, or your Prestige perk tree, Defensive Stance, we'll get into later. But to be honest, the other perks up here like Methodical Destruction, especially Arc Cleave, are just too valuable to give up. So I think they should probably buff this one up into like a proper damage reduction in my opinion, because that would make it like a serious choice between these other two, which I think are just strictly better at the moment. Next perk I want to talk about here is Explosives Adept. Damage from equipment increases by 20%. This perk is pretty damn powerful. You know, if you want to go for the full equipment focus, you can take Methodical Destruction, you can take the perk up here, Explosives Adept, and you can also take the perk down here in your Prestige perk list, Blast Radius. You have an increased radius for your equipment damage. These all feel pretty fun to play with. I think players are going to be having a lot of fun with this combo, especially if you take the team perk Combat Squad Resupply that gives your entire team an additional equipment except for Melt-A-Bombs. And I think they did a pretty good job incorporating this equipment feel on the entire class, and the synergies are quite evident. Now the next perk in this column here is called Push the Advantage. After a finisher, your melee weapon deals 20% more damage for 15 seconds. This perk is okay. It does have a pretty decent amount of a damage buff, but the big thing here is that unlike the perk Arc Cleave, the other two melee perks in this tree, like Push the Advantage and the perk over here, Counter Offensive Protocols, these are both additive buffs and not multiplicative, and because of that, their value is a little bit lower than this one, but they're still pretty decent. The final perk down here is called a Long Range Barrage. Range damage at ranges greater than 20 meters increases by 25%. This perk is really damn good. I actually think this perk, on top of things like the Oculus Bolt Carbine, is going to be one of the strongest options for this class, because the Oculus Bolt Carbine has a variant with a ×2 headshot multiplier, and because of that, your headshot damage goes up tremendously. And on top of your headshot damage, damage perks like Retaliation and Divine Might over here give you a 10% damage buff. These will buff up the damage of your Servo-gun. Your Servo-gun will do more damage based on the base damage of your weapon, which is kind of silly. I kind of hope they change that, because for now, it makes it so your Servo-gun can definitely be held back by your primary. I don't think that's really a good thing for the class, but for now, it's the way it is. And your Servo-gun can also do headshot damage, though it does always aim for the body, which is kind of unfortunate the way it is. Now, this perk combined with perks like with weapons like the Oculus Bolt Carbine will have you doing a tremendous amount of range damage, especially if you stack it on top of things like Methodical Destruction and Explosive Enfilade. This is a really fun perk combo in the game, in my opinion, and Oculus Bolt Carbine is probably like a best in slot bolter option for like straight damage on your per shot for the bolters. And the only reason I would take other options like the grenade launcher and stuff like that is for the obvious reasons that you have a grenade, and the Plasma Incinerator overall I think is held back the most, because unfortunately the Techmarine does not have perks like Plasma Boost, which kind of carry this on Tactical. It also doesn't have all the other range damage buffs that are very easy to obtain that the Tactical does, but that's kind of an unfortunate oversight in my opinion. I think this one needs to be buffed though. Now, as far as our team perk selection, this is where it gets a little more unfortunate, because the first perk we have here is called Reinforced Position. All team members within 15 meters of an active Tarantula Sentry Gun take 25% less damage and deal 15% more damage. This buff is really nice. 15 meters is not too far away from your Sentry Gun, but it's also not too close. It is pretty easy to stay around your Sentry Gun while this is happening. The only reason this perk doesn't matter too much currently is because the Sentry Gun on its own is so ridiculously powerful that it does not matter if you have buffs around it at all, but I'm sure that'll change in the official release, so it'll be a pretty fun little perk effect here. Now, the next perk here is actually dog shit. Battlefield Repairs. All team members fully regenerate their armor and gain 1 additional armor segment when using Medicae stims. This perk sucks. I don't know who came up with this one. We saw this leaked in the way back June leaks for the siege mode of last year, and they haven't changed it at all since then. It's not that getting armor off a stim is a bad effect on its own, but compared to other team perk effects, this is just not good. Like, Medicae stims in Space Marine 2 are just not common enough to have a team perk completely built around them, and only getting armor off of this, that's not the worst effect ever, but it's definitely not going to come up that often, so I think this will be like the least picked team perk overall for this class, and they really should rework this one. Next one down here is Combat Squad Resupply. All team members gain 1 additional equipment except for Melt-A-Bombs. I mean, this one's pretty neat. It's definitely good for the Techmarine, but when we compare it to the other perk here, which is Secure Stockpile, equipment charges stored by 1 for all team members, cooldown at 60 seconds. This perk is just strictly better. I mean, this is 60-second Melt-A-Bombs for your entire team, and Melt-A-Bombs are by far the best equipment in the entire game. And for some reason, they decided to exclude that here. Maybe it's because they were worried of synergies with the Secure Stockpile perk, but to be honest, it's just not remotely as good. But maybe they'll buff it or nerf Secure Stockpile, but I hope they do the former. Next perk here is Designated Target. Enemies hit by the Servo-gun take 15% more damage for 10 seconds. This is an additive damage buff for 10 seconds. It's pretty good. I think it's like the best in this whole tree right now because the perk down here, Inexorable Salvo, while the Servo-gun is active, you don't lose control from heavy hits and you cannot be knocked back. This perk is okay. You know, no knockback in this game is a very strong effect. Unfortunately, your Servo-gun is not active that often, and when it is active, being knocked around doesn't matter that much anyways, so I hope they do take a look at this at some point because it's just not a very strong no knockback effect, and no knockback in general is a problem for this class. The final perk down here is Synergistic Arsenal. Servo-gun recharge rate increases by 25% when you're near Tarantula Sentry Gun. This perk is also not that good. I mean, Tarantula Sentry Guns, they're fairly plentiful, but in the case of this perk, I mean, a 25% recharge rate versus just getting your bonus damage, I think bonus damage is best. So for now, I think this is like the overall best in slot in this column, though this one could be okay. Next perk here is Augmented Ammunition Feed. Servo-gun recharges 15% faster. This is a pretty good effect, though I do think the one down here, Replenishing Salvo, killing or incapacitating an enemy with the Servo-gun restores equipment, cooldown is 90 seconds, is obviously better, because this is a very easy perk effect to pull off. Even though it has a 90-second cooldown, this is much better than consecutive execution even, because one-shotting a Minoris and stuff like that will happen all the time on your Servo-gun, and getting equipment off cooldown is very easy with this. Now, the perk up here is called Augmented Tarantula. Tarantula Sentry Gun damage is increased by 25% and ammo increases by 50%. This sounds like it could be pretty strong. I mean, it might be strong in the official launch for the Techmarine, but like I said before, right now, this perk is not necessary whatsoever because the Techmarine's Tarantula Sentry Guns are so damn powerful on their own. So hopefully they take a look at that, but I do want this one to be pretty strong in the future, like Sentry Gun builds. Now, something I want to mention about the Replenishing Salvo and next perk here, which is Fortifying Salvo, that gives you an armor segment every 30 seconds on killing or incapacitating an enemy with your Servo-gun. Neither of these perks will ever trigger off of your burn effect with Omnissian Fury. So this one makes it so your Servo-gun sets enemies on fire. This absolutely carries the Servo-gun currently because the Servo-gun damage is just pathetic without this perk. And the way this perk works is that it instantaneously applies a burn effect on the first shot, and that's a pretty rare thing in Space Marine 2. Like, the Pyre Blaster is required to like hold down its trigger to actually get the burn effect on an enemy, but this one just has to shoot a single shot from like a single Q press or, you know, a Y press on your Xbox controller. So that's a pretty powerful effect, but it will not trigger these perks on the burn kills. So just keep that in mind. You have to actually kill them with the Servo-gun. Now, the perk up here is called Counter-Offensive Protocols. After using the Servo-gun, melee damage increases by 35% for 10 seconds. This is a pretty good perk. I don't think it's as good as this one because armor in Space Marine 2 is just so damn strong, but getting a 35% additive melee damage buff for just hitting one button with like no real downside, that's pretty strong, and a 10-second uptime is fairly long. Next perk here, Strategic Gunstrike. Servo-gun only targets Majora's level or higher enemies and deals 20% more damage when the target is more than 20 meters away. I mean, this could say it deals 100% more damage when the target is more than 20 meters away, and it would still not be very good. The only reason I would ever take this is because precision enhancement is just absolutely garbage without this perk effect active, because otherwise it'll just shoot Minoris, and this one only gets like 4 shots on the Servo-gun. But even then, it's just like this one still sucks regardless, so it doesn't matter too much. Now, for the signature perk tree, with Decapitating Stratagem, killing or incapacitating Majora's level or higher enemies with the Servo-gun regenerates its ability charge by 100%. The cooldown is 90 seconds. This perk could be pretty cool. Unfortunately, it will only take effect on the ones that it's worse on, Servo-gun. And what I mean by that is the standard Servo-gun bolter is just not that benefiting, excuse me, it doesn't benefit that much from this perk effect because the cooldown is not that bad. Usually turn it off before it runs out. Same thing with the plasma enhancement, but the precision enhancement would be, in theory, the best one for this perk here. But because this one doesn't actually have enough damage to kill any of the enemies it shoots at the moment, besides like zoanthropes, this perk effect pretty much never triggers on the one it would have the best synergy with, and you're just way better off taking burn. The next perk here is Lethal Perimeter. The Servo-gun marks a zone and automatically attacks enemies that enter it using 20% less energy per shot. This perk effect just sucks, okay? It might sound cool, like, oh, I put down a perimeter zone, but unfortunately, like I mentioned before, your Servo-gun does a donkey damage on its own without burn, so burn is pretty much mandatory, and using less energy per shot, which is, in theory, like, not the worst thing ever. It just does not matter. And also, the way this works is you put down, like, an Auspex zone, and they enter that zone, you keep shooting them. That's pretty neat. Unfortunately, it's garbage, but I hope they take, like, a look at that and make it so it's, like, a lower energy use or something like that. Now, as far as the prestige perks go, you know, chained headshots here is just the acuity perk on the tactical. Very strong here, very strong there. Also very strong because this class has access to the Oculus Bolt Carbine, and the Oculus Bolt Carbine has a ton of headshot damage, so really good synergy there. Next perk here is Revive Surge. When the Techmarine revives a squad member, both gain 15% faster ability charge regeneration for 10 seconds. This perk sucks ass. This is a garbage perk. It should be completely reworked. You know, revive perks in Space Marine 2 in general are just not good, and this one is one of the worst, so hopefully they take a look at this in the future. Sim Boost. Medicae Sims for 40% more health. This is pretty good. You know, it's just resilience on the tactical. Honestly, you should definitely take this because this class is very squishy. And next perk here is a Volatile Sentry. Sentry turret explosion damage increases by 40%. I mean, we have no idea how much the Sentry Gun explosion really is. Well, I've used it a couple times. But the big problem is that the Sentry Guns are so OP on the PTS, they never blow up to begin with. So kind of a useless perk, but I'm sure it'll be better in the official game. Next perk here is Blast Radius. Increase equipment damage radius by 15%. This is a really nice synergy with perks like Methodical Destruction because you hit more enemies with your blast radius, which is pretty nice. I like the equipment focus here, so definitely take a look at this one. And next perk here is Defensive Stance, which is Scramble Targeting. And the final perk here is Furious Gunstrike. After using a Gunstrike, and melee damage increases by 25% for 5 seconds. Now, unfortunately in Space Marine 2, the Techmarine's Gunstrikes on the Servo-gun do not actually trigger this. I'm sure it's an oversight or a bug. It'll probably be fixed in the official launch. But for now, this will only trigger on normal Gunstrikes, and normal Gunstrikes are only obtained on the Techmarine when your Servo-gun is active. So very, very rarely will you ever get this perk to actually work. But I'm sure it's an accident because it's probably supposed to work on the Servo-gun. It doesn't really make sense if it wasn't because a 5-second uptime is just not that long at all. So I'm sure they're just made a mistake. Now, as far as the new Omnissian Axe is concerned, I think this is like the best setup for the heroic version and the fencing and balance versions. It's pretty fun to just rush through here, Perpetual Strength into the perk here, Armor Siphon. Killing a foe with the Omnissian Strike restores an armor segment, cooldown at 60 seconds. Moving here into the perk Perpetual Strength, then the perk Static Charge. Each foe hit during the Omnissian Rush increases damage by 10% within 40 seconds. Okay, I thought I read that English that right. I mean, the description's wrong. So it says each foe hit during Omnissian Rush increases damage of 10% within 4 seconds. Clearly the translation did not go through on the PTS. Next perk here is Iron Rush. Incoming range damage is reduced by 50% while using the Omnissian Rush attack. This is pretty nice. I've heard this is bugged a bit, but I'm sure that'll be fixed in the official patch. Next perk here is Armored Strength. Up here into the perk Expose. Foes hit by the Omnissian Rush or Omnissian Strike take 15% increased damage for 5 seconds. This is nice to rush an enemy, immediately get that damage buff on them, activate your Servo-gun, do more damage to them, and just like shoot them in the face or follow up with melee attacks. Pretty nice synergy there. Then I go down here in Perpetual Strength, and then I grab the perk here, Energized. While charging and releasing Electric Discharge, you won't lose control from heavy hits and cannot be knocked back. And I also grab the perk here, Rapid Charge. Electric Discharge charges 40% faster. I think this gives you the best of everything you'd want on a rush build here, mainly because the perk down here, Executioner, is okay, but it works way better with the perk over here, Cleaving Strike. Light combo attacks this weapon, deal damage to nearby foes around the target. And like this perk is pretty damn powerful. Unfortunately, it will blow up barrels in your face if you are not careful, so keep that in mind. And the final perk here, Rapid Charge. Getting your discharges out faster is just super fucking useful on this weapon, so definitely grab this one. And currently, this perk, Mighty Blast, is bugged, and the other perks up here are not that bad. It's just that they don't give you a huge bonus compared to these, and there's not like a huge reason to go down this tree because they're pretty niche perks. Like this one's an armor restore with a 30% HP requirement, and this one has a 15-second cooldown for like one buff on one weapon attack, which is okay, but pretty gimmicky. Now, as far as like the balance and block versions are concerned, if you take block, I would just go down the bottom tree because you're going for all in on the cleaving strikes. You're going all in for things like supercharged follow-up. Afterwards, discharging next light attack becomes a powerful sprint attack. You get the perpetual strength. You get to go for full damage. You can grab that expose up here if you want, or you could skip this or one of these perks down here and just go all the way into the rapid charge. I probably would take rapid charge over expose here, but it really depends on how you want to set it up. But either way, I think the bottom tree definitely benefits off the block Omnissian Axe more. And as far as the best melee weapon on this class currently, in my opinion, it's just the balanced power axe. You're probably like, what the fuck did you just say? Did you say balanced power axe is the best melee weapon on this class? Well, the thing is that because you have automatic servo-gun strikes on this class and the arc cleave perk for 25% melee damage buffs that are multiplicative on your power wave, you can do more damage off of a power wave with a gun strike than you're doing off a single charge of a block axe, because they did buff up balanced weapons in this patch. So if we set it up this way and go perpetual strength into coup de grace into perpetual strength, and like build it for like the primary melee damage that we would on other classes up into the perks tactical retreat and power wave, you're doing like over 200 damage on a combo of a power wave into a gun strike, which is like over 70% of the HP of most Majoris in the game, which is pretty intense. So definitely a great option and probably the best option on the class. And if it's not this, it's definitely the block axe. And I really wouldn't take the fencing one because the perk up here, power strike, 20% more damage on gun strikes is pretty good for classes like assault that take their secondary into account. But on this class, it's just not that good because your gun strike damage is just not that high in the servo gun ones. But if you want to, you definitely could, because I know some people like fencing. And as far as like the power sword is concerned, it's okay. The power sword's a power sword. It's an alright weapon. Definitely not like a top tier thing anymore, but it's okay. As far as the power gladius is concerned, with a 360% damage buff, this weapon on top of arc cleave, on top of all of your other melee damage buffs, yeah, you could hit like a truck on the combat knife with this thing. It's pretty damn intense, and the balanced knife may be a little off-putting to some people compared to the brand new fencing knife we have here that gives you the heroic perk effect in Knuckles. Riposte window is shorter, where each riposte deals damage to the attacker. But I would say the power gladius is still king, because getting damage on every parry with a shorter parry window, which is basically just a block window with a fencing effect, that's not terrible, but 360% damage buff is 360% damage buff. I think this weapon, the block and balanced power axes, and the Omnissian Axe on the block and fencing versions, even the balanced one, which is pretty strong, are all going to be the best choices on here. The power sword being worse than slot, but still pretty decent. Now, as far as secondaries go, I do want to mention that the Inferno pistol has a weird interaction right now with the servo gun, that it will limit your gun strike range when you fire off a gun strike with your servo gun, because the Inferno pistol has a base range that is lower than all of the other gun strike options in the game, and that'll be taken into account for your servo gun. I'm pretty sure it's a bug at the moment, but I just want to make sure people are aware of that. But that's pretty much my opinion on the breakdown on the Techmarine. So let me know what you guys think of the Techmarine currently. I'll have more guides around the Tarantula Sentry guns and the more intricate details of the Techmarine servo gun and all that stuff in the future. And as always, thank you for watching. Take it easy. If you like content like this, subscribe for more. Bye.